I kind of owe my career to an obituary. I'm actually an award-winning obituary writer, which is something that I don't know if they have obituary awards, but I won an award for writing an obituary. And guess what? It's not really my award. I had a co-author, and that co-author was my husband because we wrote his obituary together. Before he died, which is kind of strange. Usually people do wait until somebody's dead before they write their obituary, but my husband was 35. He had just entered hospice. We were laying in bed. We were watching Game of Thrones. He said, I can't believe I'm not going to know how this show ends. And you know what? I'm glad. One small mercy to him dying in 2014 is he didn't have to see the end of Game of Thrones. Okay, he got to die when that show was kind of at its best, and he didn't have to see, you know what he didn't have to see. You know, I know that show just kind of just like right at the end. And I'd say it to their face. I'd say it to their face. And this is me saying it to their face. They're obviously watching this.
Are you happy with how things ended?
Yeah. Anyways, Aaron and I wrote his obituary together because I did not want to do it alone and because he was such a specific person and I wanted him to decide what was important and how he wanted to be remembered. And he wanted to be remembered as himself, not as this sad story. Oh, I'm 35, I died of brain cancer. Oh, everyone's gonna miss me. That's like how he talked about it. So we wrote it together. We included his rock star past. He's in a band called the Asparagus Children, Anoka County, Minnesota. They were majorly popular in far-flung suburbs in the late 90s. We revealed his identity as Spider-Man. We included his first wife, Gwen Stefani. She's never commented on her grief, and that's okay because we all grieve differently, and Gwen Stefani decided to grieve him quietly. That is her choice, and I really don't want anyone to give her any shit about that, okay? So anyways, that was 2014. The world was a different place. We were in a different time media-wise. We were on like one algorithm. If I asked, did you see that cat video? You'd be like, yeah, I saw the cat video. You wouldn't be like, which one? What? Are you talking about TikTok? Are you talking about Fufu? Well, Blim Blam? Oh, what do you know? It was all the same internet basically. And his obituary was published in the Minneapolis Star Tribune and it went crazy viral, like 2014 viral. I'm talking BuzzFeed, baby. I'm talking Time Magazine. I'm talking like radio stations, TV. It was really bananas, not the intention, but also kind of the intention because one of Aaron's magical qualities was that he really made everybody feel like they were a part of the joke. The party could not have started until you arrived. And I loved that about him. And I just remember thinking like, of course, this thing that we wrote as kind of just like an inside joke for the people who loved him would really be something that a lot of people loved, right? Like his inside jokes were not, mean and exclusionary. It was like, oh, like it just opened up. It just was very, very, very Aaron. And when I think about it, like I was always a writer, I was always creating, but that obituary meant that a lot of people found my Tumblr. I told you it was 2014, and that led to me writing a book proposal, which led to my first book, which then I didn't have a job anymore, and I was like, I better start a podcast. It just like at one thing built on another, but it all leads back to Aaron. All roads lead back to Aaron, and all roads lead back to that obituary, which was us laying in bed, me typing, him talking, us like throwing lines back and forth and crying, and then me just shutting my laptop and being like, we can turn the TV back on. I love obituaries. I love obituaries. We've actually made a few episodes, and we've actually made more than a few episodes about obituaries, about having other people share their loved ones' obituaries or the obituaries they wish they would have been able to publish, because I think it's really powerful to help remember people's loved ones, whether or not you knew them. And a really good obituary makes you feel like you knew that person and kind of helps you share in that memorialization, that remembering with the people who truly miss this person. All that to say, I'm Nora McInerny, and this is Terrible Thanks for asking. We are here to let people tell the truth about what life is like. And the truth about life ending is that some people are left behind. And what do we do as people who are left behind? We try to remember the people who are gone. And what is one way that we do that? We write an obituary. And why did we do that? Because you used to have to publish them in the paper so people would know everyone was dead. And why do we keep doing it? Because it feels good, okay? And because, I don't know, we want to leave something behind that is not just a Facebook post. And are obituaries expensive? You bet. And is anyone reading the newspaper? I hope so. Please support media. We asked people to send in the obituaries for the people they love, and they did it. And here we go. I'm going to share them with you, or we're going to remember the dead, whether or not there are dead people. I love doing this because it is such a privilege to learn about the people that other people loved and lost. The last time we did this, I was an absolute wreck. So let's see how I do emotionally today. This first one comes from Mackenzie, and she wrote us this email. I find myself to be a new member of the Hot Young Widows Club. My wife, Megan, passed away suddenly and unexpectedly at the age of 28 of a cardiac event on November 17th, just a couple months ago. Now, I don't think this is an award-winning obituary, but it's something that I wrote in the foggiest days of my life. I hardly even remember writing it, and rereading it now, I can't believe that I was able to make complete sentences in those days. Here's her obituary. Megan Lee Galloway Cole, 28, of Astoria, New York, passed away unexpectedly on November 17th, 2023, as the result of a sudden cardiac event. In 2022, Megan married her wife, Mackenzie Galloway Cole, at a ceremony in Astoria, New York. They wed in the neighborhood where they met and built their life together. Megan had an unparalleled love for life, and she poured her soul into every interest she explored. She found and developed a strong community everywhere she went, from Greenville to Miami University to New York City. Her lifelong love of basketball was infectious, and she was passionate about women in sports. She was an avid reader, and she found simple joy in playing the daily New York Times word games over a cup of coffee. She made friends with animals everywhere she went, and they could always sense her warmth. Megan had the biggest smile, the best laugh, and the most comforting hug. I am so sorry that you are a part of this shitty club. Mackenzie, welcome to the club. We hate it here. I'm sorry you joined. The cost of admission is bananas. It is in no way worth it, but thank you for sharing Megan with us. We actually have another email from another hot young widow. Kenix wrote us a beautiful email about their fiance who died. And by the way, if your fiance dies, your boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, I'm just calling you a widow, okay? I use the word very expansively. Some people are really offended by that, like, oh, you didn't get married. I don't care if you got married. I will give you a widow card to play if you were in love with someone and they died. That's okay. So back to Kenix and Kenix's fiance. They met when they were 19. They were together 9 years. Here's part of that email. We grew up together in a lot of ways, and we helped each other heal. When we encountered problems, he was always so cool, calm, and collected. He's my rock who always made me feel like it would be all right. He loved me for exactly who I was, in foul or fair weather. He loved everyone for exactly who they were. He's the most emotionally intelligent and empathetic person I've ever met. He was always generous with his loved ones, and he was always there for people when they needed him. He taught me that things didn't matter. People did. He had so much going against him, but he was so resilient. He always lifted people up. He had such a good moral compass. He was goofy as hell, and we had the best time because we loved each other's sense of humor, spanned from fart jokes to some really witty banter. I once wrote a speech on the back of a receipt on a bus a few years back on one of my treks back and forth from New Jersey to Long Island. It was what I would say to him in my vows when we got married. I lost that receipt, but the gist of it was that I used to watch a lot of romantic comedies growing up, and I always wanted a love like those movies. Well, while we fell head over heels for each other at first, he taught me that love is not romantic comedy. I always had the intrusive thought that we were so different in how we grew up, in our culture, and how we think, and we also carried different baggage. Him from his father passing away tragically, and mine from my mental health. He always said that same is boring. And he really believed that love isn't just something that happens. It's a choice that two people make, and It's something that two people build together. The reason why we have this life together is because he always fought for us to be together. And he taught me that love is people being willing to put in the work. We both wanted the same things out of life, and he worked hard in school and through boot camp so that we could have the life we envisioned. We wanted to be happy. We wanted to travel and have hobbies and do things that brought us joy and have children someday. And open a board game cafe. I always wanted to support his dreams because he was so passionate and I wanted to be along for the ride. I figured I would bake for his cafe and help run social media and do photography, and we'd have a cute little family business together. He wanted 2 children, and he wanted to teach them that an upside-down Christmas tree bolted from the ceiling was totally normal. He was very against me wanting to name one of our kids Zephyr. He was an incredibly gifted writer, and he wanted to write a book someday. His ultimate dream was to be an old grandpa who was a regular at a diner where the waitress would know him and his order by default. I am always going to be really sad that we never got to have that chance. I am always going to be really sad that we never had the chance to go on that journey. We had a lot of firsts with each other. He's my first love, and he's the love of my life. We met when we were 19, and I always wondered, how did I get so lucky to get it right the first time? What are the chances of that? I'm so thankful for all the love and the lessons he taught me in the 9 years we've been together. He's forever my person, my best friend, and my soulmate. I just want you all to know that life is short and unexpected. I want you all to find someone who loves you the way we love each other. I want you all to find someone who makes the choice to love you and work for you. If he has taught us anything, it's to go be a nerd. Go try new things and find joy in them. And when you do, think of him, because he'd be so happy to have something that makes you happy and excited. So if you're listening, I miss you. And you and Kitty and I will be together again someday. You know, for me, it's always you. Woo! Coming with that Taylor Swift lyric right at the end. Our next one is from Cherie. Cherie actually sent us an essay that she wrote for Elle.com about an abortion that she had a few years ago before the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And I wanted to read a little piece of it because, as Cherie said in her email, this essay is an obituary of sorts for her unborn son. A few years ago, Cherie found out that she was pregnant with twins, but she found out at 20 weeks that the twins had developed twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. One twin had taken over the blood supply of the other, and if she tried to give birth to both babies, both of them would have likely died. This is part of her piece. A 2.5-hour ultrasound on Friday morning with specialists showed us that the little twin, twin B, had lost more than half of his minimal amniotic fluid in the hours since our last scan. He could barely move. At one point, I looked up at the screen to see 12 images of his brain. Even I could tell something was wrong. When the scan was over, the doctors told us that the situation had changed considerably. We now had stage 3 twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and twin B had bleeding in his brain. When they left the room, I turned to my husband and calmly said, "You know we're talking about termination now." Then, suddenly sobbing, I asked him if he thought they could save the bigger twin. A kind and gentle doctor told us twin B was going to die. He explained that when one twin's heart stops in a shared placenta, the other twin's body will send out all of its own blood supply to try to create a blood pressure in its sibling. That action will almost always ensure that both twins die. We couldn't save twin B, but if we terminated him through a procedure called radio frequency ablation, we could try to save twin A. There would be no bleeding out for twin A, one tiny body giving everything over to save another. There would be a very good chance of the pregnancy surviving, but I would have to make the choice to stop B's heart. We had an hour to decide. There was no choice. I'm their mother. I wanted twin A to have a chance to live. My son is now 1. When I feel him reach for me, I think of his brother. I treasure my son. I would have treasured them both. We'll link to that full piece in the description if you want to read the whole thing. I couldn't read the whole thing because I'm already crying, but it was really beautiful. I'm glad that we had a different kind of example because there are certain things that people don't want to talk about and that make it harder for people to honor and remember that loss, but that's a really big decision and no decision at all. And I'm glad that you were able to do that and to save your beautiful boy who would have died trying to save his beautiful brother. God. Woo, okay. How did I think this was gonna go? I was going to read a bunch of obituaries and be fine. This next obituary is from Carly. Carly wrote this about her friend Jessica, who died of cystic fibrosis and left behind a husband and a toddler. My entire life, the sound of Jess's infectious hissing laugh was a sign that, oh, now we're really having fun. And with Jess, that fun was often of the culinary persuasion. Jessica was a foodie before foodie was a word. When we were kids, that took the form of her enjoying unique food combinations and very particular tastes. Sour cream and cheddar potato chips dipped in cottage cheese. Okay, that's so good. I love that. Anything dairy related, I'm in. Reuben sandwiches, which even as a child, she insisted on making with whole grain mustard instead of Thousand Island dressing for the sake of authenticity. Goat cheese, British teas and biscuits. When we were old enough to pay for our own meals, that morphed into seeking out the best places in Austin with limitless chips and salsa. And more recently, developing a salsa bar routine at Rosa's that was so meticulous, she wouldn't allow anyone else to do takeout orders for her. She hosted lavish dinner parties and baked delicious, extravagantly decorated desserts, including a legendary flaming plum pudding. Her discerning palate was certainly a product of her travels, many of which we got to join her on. Traveling with Jess was a lesson in learning to love getting lost. Jess had an insatiable appetite for seeing, doing, tasting something new. Thanks to her, we got to see London, Paris, Normandy, Greece, the Dalmatian coast. I can't tell you how many of my favorite memories of our travels were because we got on the wrong bus or because we decided in a split second to jump off our train early and only walk on the streets with funny names. The last afternoon we all spent together, Grace gave Jess and the three of us a necklace with a compass charm at the end, a daily reminder of the source of our wanderlust. I will not be so glib as to say anything about lemons and lemonade. Life did not give Jess anything so simple as to be remedied by a few cups of sugar. She was born into struggle and pain and a concrete understanding of her own mortality. Cystic fibrosis gave her a death sentence. And from that, Jessica made life. All right, this next one is about Jonathan Street. Jonathan died last year at 35. He had 2 little kids and a wife, Rachel. And Rachel sent us this. Jonathan was a man of intensity. He pursued his passions, music, whitewater kayaking, football, fitness, with his whole self. He often said he felt most at home on the water and was known to hoot and holler joyfully from his kayak. He recently kayaked the Jarbidge River in Idaho with a group of close friends on a 5-day trip and loved every moment. A true fitness enthusiast, he was far more than a man who just enjoyed working out. He was a beacon of motivation and enthusiasm, spending countless hours mastering his workouts and helping others uncover hidden strengths and push themselves to their limits. He was always ready with a word of encouragement and found great fulfillment in helping others achieve their goals. Jonathan's self-designed CrossFit garage gym was his sanctuary. You could find him there nearly every morning, getting stronger and faster. He will be remembered for the passion he brought to every workout. His hallmark was a burst of energy for a final push with the call, "Last one, best one." His dog Lola brought him so much peace and comfort. He would say, "That dog has a soul," and often remarked how she helped him better understand how to accept love. Spiritually, Jonathan was a seeker and a learner. His father, a pastor in Tennessee, guided his son to walk with Jesus. He was with his mother when he prayed to accept Jesus at just 6 years old. Jonathan read the Bible front to back several times and always welcomed deep discussion. He sought to feel at peace with himself and the world around him. He longed for understanding and connection with the world beyond this one and reevaluated his beliefs many times over the years. A constant throughout his search was a belief of God as an unfathomable and loving Father who desires for people to love and accept one another. Jonathan was an encouraging and honest friend. He would never shy away from stating hard truths and would never sugarcoat his thoughts. Jonathan strived to be the husband and father he wanted to become and was known for great moments of happiness and generosity. He also struggled for many years with deep inner anguish and feelings of inadequacy he could not shake. During his final bout of despair, the beauty and the fragility of the gift of life and love had slipped from his view. If there's one thing Jonathan would hope for every one of us, it is this: be the best father, mother, sister, brother, husband, or wife that you can, and live your life with passion. If you are reading this and experience similar feelings as Jonathan did, please know that change is possible and healing can be found. Life is difficult and beyond painful at times, but there is a pathway to a better tomorrow. Also, you should try whitewater kayaking sometime. Oh, I'm not going to try whitewater kayaking. It freaks me out. But yeah, the despair. Don't despair. Don't despair. Don't go. Don't go. Tell anyone. Call 988. But don't go. People need you. The next thing we're going to read, it isn't actually an obituary. It's somebody's feelings about an obituary that they haven't read. And I wanted to include it because sometimes grief doesn't look like just sweet words and reminiscing. It often brings up a lot of pain. So we're keeping this writer anonymous. The call for obituaries has had me thinking a lot about my dad. My dad died in January 2018. And at that point, I hadn't spoken to him since approximately October 2001. My parents divorced when I was 5, though I honestly have no real memories of doing anything as a family together. I could write a novel explaining the sad why am I unlovable feelings I've had throughout my life, or the abandonment issues that still manifest in ways as a 41-year-old, but the real reason I decided to send a note is because I have never read my dad's obituary. When he died, my stepmother, who is absolutely the evil kind, which we always knew, but his death brought out with a vengeance, asked my sister, who did have a semblance of a relationship with my dad, if I wanted to be listed in the obituary. I decided to let her choose what she felt was best and what he would have wanted, because he was essentially a stranger to me. I never asked what the resolution was, and I have never looked it up because I feel as though either answer would hurt. Yes, biologically, I am his daughter and I have the right to be listed, but that man was not a father, and I don't feel like he earned the right to truly call me his daughter in any way other than genetically. It would hurt to be in it because of the flood of what ifs and questions and tail spinning it could cause, and it would hurt to be out because F you, you absolute piece of crap. Someday I may be ready to read the answer, but maybe not. Miranda Davis shared an obituary for her grandfather. She did not write it. In fact, she's not sure who wrote it. She thinks maybe someone in her grandfather's third wife's family, which, is an interesting sentence. I love that. But apparently this obituary ruffled a lot of feathers because whoever wrote it didn't list the grandfather's biological children, grandchildren, and former wives. But this isn't about her family drama, even though that sounds very entertaining. Miranda sent in this obituary because it's funny, and that's how I want to end this. I want to end this episode, this video, with this remembrance of her grandpa Hal. In the early afternoon hours of December 31st, 2022, Hal Meisenheimer enjoyed 2 Krispy Kreme donuts, a few sips of whiskey, and his final episode of Gunsmoke. That evening, this modern-day cowboy quietly succumbed to the slings and arrows of cancer and dementia. By his side and holding his hands were his wife and daughter. Shortly before passing, he told them both that he was ready to go home. It is tough to imagine a better way to exit this earth. For 88 years, those close to this man thought he was indestructible. Hal had previously survived a heart attack, an unknown illness that left him non-responsive for days, and a fight with a Freightliner truck. Through it all, he never admitted to having a bad day, rarely admitted to feeling pain, and simply refused to complain. Hal was tougher than any of those cowboys depicted in the westerns he loved to watch. He initially made a living as a butcher and then a truck driver. Though not a doctor, he doled out medical advice every now and then. One such occasion stands out above the rest. After fishing with his grandson one morning, Hal was cleaning the catch when he suffered what some call a catfish sting. One of the fins punctured his hand. The pain lasted for days. When he could no longer deny the wound was infected, Hal reluctantly agreed to see a professional. Hal, go to the doctor. However, upon reaching the hospital, he continued to argue that the fuss was unnecessary and maintained that he was only present to appease his wife. A well-trained physician decided that Hal was suffering from cellulitis, a rare complication from handling catfish. Antibiotic treatment was ordered. However, Hal initially refused and claimed that the good doctor was just running up the bill, a criticism he often leveled against the medical profession. This is such a strange obituary. Okay. Hal further explained that the prescribed treatment was simply not necessary in this case because immediately after the injury occurred, he had rubbed the wound on the fish's a-hole. Apologies for the language. That's what he said. Through the laughter, Hal persisted in claiming that this treatment was sufficient. The men reached a stalemate and the doc left the room. Shortly thereafter, he returned to admit that he had researched the matter and determined that rubbing the wound on the underbelly of the catfish may have actually conveyed some benefit. Nevertheless, the order for antibiotics remained in place. Hal reluctantly complied. I have to know if this is like the full obituary and how much money someone spent telling the world that their grandpa rubbed his hand on a fish's beehole. Okay.
What?
Rest in peace, Hal. Rest in peace to everybody, to all of us, and to all the people that we loved and lost. And thank you for sending in your loved ones' obituaries. It really is an honor to read them and learn about you and the people you have loved. I'm Nora McInerny, and I only cried a little bit. Okay, that was good. That was good. I think my makeup's still okay. Woo. If you are listening to this episode, you are a TTFA premium subscriber and you are the people who make this show possible. So thank you for subscribing on Patreon or Apple or wherever you are hearing this. We have a few other shows that we produce. One is called Refamulating, about the many ways to make and remake your family. The other one is called It's Going to Be Okay. It's a short daily show. We have links in our descriptions to our new YouTube and to everything else you might be interested in. We are a production of Feelings & Co. and our team is Claire McInerny, Marcel Malekebu, and Grace Barry. Our theme music is by Joffrey Lamar Wilson. Bye, and rest in peace.